Thank you very much for joining us yet again on our news desk. The headlines. Minister of Health Chitalu Chilufya has dismissed online reports suggesting that there is an outbreak of Ebola in Zambia. Zambia will this month assume the presidency of the Africa Union AU autonomous body, Africa Civil Aviation Commission. In our news in detail, Minister of Health Chitalu Chilufya has dismissed online reports suggesting that there is an outbreak of Ebola in Zambia. Dr. Chilufya clarified at a media briefing that the said suspected case of Ebola at Levi Mwanawasa Teaching Hospital being reported about was a case of septicemia, a condition of bacteria in the blood. He says the patient, aged 41, is a male resident of Serenje district who came to Lusaka for a church camp meeting on 27th of August and that he was already of ill health when he traveled. Dr. Chilufya says the country is therefore safe and surveillance has been heightened as 7-member rapid response teams per district in Northwestern Province are being trained in Solwezi. He notes that this is to be followed by training on the Copper Belt and that prior to this, other district teams have been trained in Northwestern and Luapula provinces, considering their proximity to the DRC.
I want to inform the public that contrary to the news circulating on the social media, there is no case of Ebola virus disease in Zambia. Yes, we have admitted a patient at Levi Mwanawasa Hospital who is a 41-year male-old suspect, a resident of Serenje district who came to Lusaka for a church meeting on 27th August 2018. He was already ill on travel and he presented with fever, discoloration of the skin resulting from bleeding underneath the skin, and red patching in the white of the eye, among other symptoms. This patient was admitted and quarantined to rule out EVD. This is important. It means that our surveillance system is alert enough to pick cases that are suspicious, and so this patient was quarantined. On further investigation, our health workers made a tentative diagnosis of septicemia, which is a condition where there's a bacterial infection in the bloodstream. Further, our laboratory investigations conducted at the University of Zambia, School of Veterinary Medicine, the diagnosis of Ebola virus disease was ruled out completely. I must indicate that we're pleased by the response from the media, and I would like to encourage the general public to maintain such high levels of suspicion, because surveillance relies on suspicion.
And Dr. Chilufya says cross-border activities between Zambia and Congo will continue despite the Ebola outbreak in that country.
Whatever interventions we are putting in place are in alignment to the international health regulations. And at this stage, we do not encourage stopping of people crossing into the country at such borders. So what we have escalated instead is surveillance at all ports of entry, including Kasumbalesa. And furthermore, cross-border surveillance activities have been strengthened. So we're working together with our colleagues in the Congo and with World Health Organization in Africa, CDC, to ensure that we strengthen cross-border activities. But Zambia is a party to the international health regulations and will not practice anything that is outside the tenets outlined in the IHR. Whatever.
Zambia will this month assume for a period of 3 years the presidency of the African Union autonomous body, African Civil Aviation Commission, AFCAC. This will be during the AFCAC extraordinary and ordinary plenary sessions to be held in Livingstone from the 23rd to the 27th of September. Civil Aviation Authority Director General Gabriel Lesa says his authority and the Zambia Airports Corporation are hosting the 2 sessions, which will be preceded by a burial meeting. Mr. Lesa says to this effect, on Monday, the 3rd of September, the AFCAC Interim Secretary General and members from the Secretariat in Dakar, Senegal, were in Zambia ahead of the 2 plenary sessions. In an interview with QTV News, Mr. Lesa has disclosed to QTV News that the purpose of this visit was to inspect the venue and preparedness of the country to host the 2 events. Mr. Lesa, who will be the president of AFCAC after plenary sessions, notes that the significance that comes with this are the benefits that Zambia will derive from being part of the AFCAC. He says this includes economic integration and a seamless harmonization of the rules and regulations for the flight procedures, use of upper airspaces, as well as coordinated efforts on capacity building in Africa.
What is also significant about this is that Zambia is actually taking over the presidency of the African Union's specialized body, the African Civil Aviation Commission. We are actually taking over the presidency for the next 3 years, and in that stead, the CA actually will be taking over the presidency. Now, the significant issues that come with this are the benefits that we are going to derive from this. Basically, economic integration of Africa, the seamless harmonization of the rules and regulations for the flight procedures and the upper airspace, the use of the upper airspace, as well as coordinated efforts on capacity building throughout Africa. And similarly, there are other coordinated efforts in other areas which Zambia now will be party in terms of making decision making and also lending the little lessons we've learned along the way.
Mr. Lesa has disclosed that the Kenneth Kaunda International Airport has been formally granted an aerodrome certificate by the CAA. Mr. Lesa notes that the certificate was granted on the 20th of August this year in a process that took the CAA about 1.5 years. He says what the granting of the certificate signifies is that the Zambia Airports Corporation has now managed to meet the requirement of the CAA both in statutory and safety and security requirements.
What does this also mean? For the passenger, it means a lot of assurance for safety, that the standards, safety and security standards that are enshrined in those documents I've talked about have been complied with, which assures adequate safety, flight safety, as well as flight security. So that was one of the issues we wanted to talk about. And we had a visit because there were about 12 African countries which were being assisted by the East and Southern Africa region office of ICAO in Nairobi to assist them to actually capacitate their people and watch over the process of airport certification. Zambia, we are proud to report that Zambia has actually managed to do this, and the Deputy Regional Director actually came, Mr. Atemon Dikumana. He was in the country last week. He was very impressed with what he saw. A lot of things have been done, and with the way we've started going, there's room for actually much more improvement, and we should be able to actually now go to the other international airports such as Livingstone, Harimwanga, Nkumbula, and Simon Mwansakapwepwe to actually certify them. What does
Government has been urged to consider reducing corporate tax from the current 35% to 25% in the 2019 national budget. Zambia Chamber of Commerce and Industry, Zachi President Michael Nyirenda, has told Q News in an interview that Zambia is one of the highest countries regarding taxing the formal sector, like corporate tax in the region. Mr. Nyirenda says countries like Botswana and the Democratic Republic of Congo are changing corporate tax to 15% and 30% respectively. He is of the view that the country's economy will perform better if the tax base is broadened and the taxes such as corporate tax are reduced. Mr. Nyirenda states that taxes are draining the formal sector as they are too much to bear.
We've been discussing over and our submission over next year's budget. And we have mentioned the issues of widening the tax net, but also reducing the tax, because there is a theory that the higher the tax, it's nature for people or individuals to try and avoid. But if the tax is lower and is within your range, you are likely to pay. Thereby, actually, ultimately government collecting more. But if you've got a higher tax and taxing only a few, you are likely to collect the numbers that you are targeting, because all these few will actually get fatigued, because the same people have other taxes that they have to pay. I mean, I can enumerate here, apart from your income tax, you have all these other taxes. And everything put together, you find that it will be such a huge bill on individual companies, including even individuals themselves. So we do believe, as Zaki, that if we widen the tax net, I know there's a lot of other informal sector members that are not being taxed currently. So our view has been to widen the tax net and try and lower the tax rate. And these examples are wide. That in true, we have been presenting to government that over the last few years that we are about the highest, because at our corporate tax, for example, is at 35. But believe you me, DRC, for whatever reason, I don't want to demean them, they are lower than us, they are at 30. But you have countries like Botswana that are charging corporate tax at 15%. So we've proposed to government to look at ways of targeting where we can reduce, say, bands of 2.5 every year towards going to 25% or between 25 and 30% as a corporate tax. That way we believe that more companies and individuals will be likely to pay than if you have a higher tax and only a few are paying.
The opposition MMD says it is eager to see how government will outline the measures it will put in place to tackle the issue of public debt in the sitting of next parliament, which opens this month. National Secretary Raphael Nakachinda says his party wants to particularly see the solutions that government has crafted to get Zambia out of its current economic challenges. Mr. Nakachinda says on the political front, the MMD is looking forward to seeing the political parties' bill tabled in this session of Parliament, which President Edgar Lungu is scheduled to open. In an interview with QTV News, Mr. Nakachinda says this is in order that the country can begin to have political parties that operate in a more institutionalized manner. Mr. Nakachinda states that the former ruling party believes that once the political party's bill is enacted into law, capacity will be built to provide a platform for proper leadership.
So we are very eager to hear how government is going to be tackling the issues of the economy and the debt situation that we're dealing with. What are the solutions that government has crafted to get us out of the economic challenges that we're faced with. From a political front, we are also looking forward to have, in this session of Parliament, the political parties bill presented so that we can begin to have political parties function in a more institutionalized manner, and we begin to build capacity for political platforms so that proper leadership can be ushered into government. Those are the expectations we have in terms of identifying the critical issues that needs to be addressed. So we have
Former Finance Minister Katele Kalumba has urged government to heed to the caution against disclosing the terms for refinancing the $750 million Eurobond. The Economics Association of Zambia, EAZ, has warned that disclosing the terms for refinancing Zambia's first Eurobond would jeopardize its bargaining abilities in refinancing its other two Eurobonds. And Dr. Kalumba, who was cabinet minister under the Frederick Chiluba-led MMD government, says if government discloses the terms for refinancing the first Eurobond, it will also expose its hand. In an interview by telephone, Dr. Kalumba states that government cannot therefore disclose such information to the public before negotiating with the lender. Dr. Kalumba does not think the issue of transparency and accountability should ever rise before government secures any resources through debt contraction. He says there are already systems by which Zambians can know whether or not there is transparency in the use of public funds secured through a debt.
Before you negotiate, you can't disclose to the public before you negotiate with the lender in terms of the financing. It's called the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. Okay, the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. What it is that you have your point C, but you are talking at point B. But what you really want to get is point C. It's a strategy negotiating. When I was negotiating with the fund or a bank, when you couldn't, before you go there, already start publicizing your strategies for your financing. Before you negotiate.
Meanwhile, economist Noah Nkoma thinks that it should not be mandatory for government to disclose the terms for refinancing of any bond it issues. Mr. Nkoma, who is also a former ESZ president, notes that he has not personally heard anywhere where it has been mandatory for a government to make such disclosures. He has told QTV News in a separate interview that, in his view, that the people should only have sufficient confidence in the government to do what is in the best interest of the country. The Human Rights Commission, HRC, is concerned that the implementation of the Public Order Act has continued to contradict Article 21 of the Republican Constitution. Spokesperson Mwelwa Muleya says failure to recognize the provisions of the article in the implementation of the Act, especially during elections, is a violation of human rights. Mr. Muleya states that the Commission will continue to demand that the Zambia police implements the Public Order Act without any discrimination. He has told QTV News in an interview. Commission is not, however, in support of the enjoyment of the human rights and freedoms in the absence of law and order. Mr. Muleya says the HRC believes that the fundamental principle of the Public Order Act is to operationalize the provisions of Article 21 of the Republican Constitution.
As a commission, we are calling again on various stakeholders to respect the provisions of the Public Order Act. The Zambia Police Service must implement the Public Order Act without any form of discrimination. And also various actors must adhere to the provisions of the Public Order Act to ensure that there is law and order. We cannot exercise the right of assembly or any right for that matter in an environment where there's breakdown of law and order. However, the Public Order Act should not be used to suppress the rights and freedoms of various interest groups in the name of maintaining law and order, because its fundamental principle is to operationalize the constitutional provision being Article 21 of the Constitution, which provides for freedom of expression. And by logical extension, that also extends to promoting freedom to express one's views and opinions, and also to receive information and also ideas from various stakeholders, as it should be the case in a democratic society such as Zambia.
Non-Governmental Gender Organizations Coordinating Council, NGOCC, has disclosed that it has managed to withdraw about 500 girls and boys from early marriages countrywide. NGOCC Acting Director Chilufya Siwale has expressed concern at the high numbers of teenage pregnancies and child marriages the country has continued to record. Ms. Siwale has attributed the high increase of teenage pregnancies to high poverty levels, lack of boarding facilities, among other reasons. She has told Q News in an interview that NGOCC has been sensitizing and making follow-ups of the children that have been withdrawn from early marriages. Ms. Siwale has stated that the organization is also working with traditional leaders, parents and guardians of the children that have been withdrawn from early marriages by sensitizing them on the dangers of child marriages to ensure that they help stop the scourge.
As we went there, we went with a lot of messages to talk to the traditional leaders and also the parents and guardians of these children. First, to talk about the health implications when the children are into a family way when they are still very young, and then to talk about the importance of education, but also to look at the legal framework of our country. Because when you look at the legal framework of our country, the Education Act itself and the education policy of Zambia, it does not condone child marriage. So, and also the Marriage Act also talks about 21 years as the marriage age. So when we looked at all those, we did discuss with the police so they can also sensitize the community, because from the word go, that was a crime and the families would be arrested for that. The children themselves would be arrested for that. But we thought, let's sensitize our communities so that they know that legally it's not acceptable. Yes, they were looking at traditional practices, but traditional practices which are harmful to the children themselves should not be encouraged. As we went,
the Zambia Qualifications Authority has entered a partnership with Engineering Institution of Zambia in its pursuit for the required standards in Zambia. ZACA Chief Executive Officer Miriam Chiaba says the verification and evaluation of foreign qualifications is aimed at not promoting but also providing quality control in the area of profession. Mrs. Chiaba says this move is necessitated by the rampant increase in the number of fake qualifications that have flooded the country, leading to the public outcry. Speaking at a memorandum of understanding, Mrs. Chiaba says the MOU will focus on the foreign qualification and bring them to the required local standards and its equivalence. She says the Zambia Qualifications Authority will verify and evaluate the qualifications on behalf of the Engineering Institution of Zambia for those people that want to operate in the field of engineering.
The Act provides for us to take up to 30 days to do this verification, but this can be done within a week, up to 30 days. What is very critical is for us to have that verification conducted. I think what agreements we've done, we've been working, this is just symbolizing the relationship that we already have. We do have certain countries, because of access and because of contacts in there, it takes a little bit long. And in those instances, those people are given provisional registration. But with our commitment to ensure that working with the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the awarding bodies, then within a shortest period time, we do the verification. That doesn't mean that if you have already been registered, your registration cannot be withdrawn. I am sure you know of people who have taken jobs before, and when it comes out that what they are holding is not a genuine qualification, they lose their job. So basically, that is the whole essence. It's not to say you will not be registered before, but I think it is a mechanism to say there has to be a verification done on your qualification.
And speaking at the same event, Engineering Institution of Zambia Registrar Newton Zulu says his organization is tasked by the law to regulate the engineering activities in Zambia. Mr. Zulu has noted that the body accredits all engineers training and working in Zambia. He says the MOU signed with ZACA will help the EIZ to evaluate and verify qualifications of foreigners that intend to work in Zambia.
So the rampancy of fraudsters, whether we quantify it or not, what is critical for us is that we've taken a proactive approach towards ensuring that whoever attempts to venture into fraudulent qualifications is taken care of by the systems that this will provide. So what is a takeaway from this is that we are enhancing quality assurance processes and creating further advanced due diligence processes that help to ensure that we provide the public with engineering professionals that are worth the salt. Engineering professionals who are fully qualified with qualifications that are authentic, qualifications that have been verified, qualifications that have been evaluated, qualifications that sit within the expectation of the standards of qualifications that are within the framework of the Zambian Qualification Authority. So that is what is critical for us as an institution. And this system will clean the process because we have a system that is able to capture fraudulent qualifications. And we expect naturally a reduction in attempts by people who are fraudulent. So,
government has been urged to come up with deliberate policies that will enhance economic diversification and subsequently improve the agricultural sector. United Party for National Development, UPND Chairman for Rural Reconstruction and Development, Mono Mapani, tells QTV News that the agricultural sector is important in ensuring food security in the country. Mr. Mapani says government therefore needs to source for funds that will go towards fighting armyworms, which have had a negative impact on the agricultural sector.
We have heard even some saying they are not farmers, their job is just to be ministers. Now, this is September. In the next few days, we'll be in the farming season. We expect the Patriotic Front budget on agriculture to ensure that they put monies in the correct areas. Colleagues promised citizens that they are going to ensure that they diversify from mining into agriculture and that they are going to come out with deliberate policies to improve the sector, which we want to believe, as in UPND, is one of the most important sectors that would actually assure people of Zambia with food security and job creation.
The Zambian youths in the fight against corruption, ZIAFAC, has noted with concern that the negative sentiments around important economic matters, which are largely speculative, have the potency to inflict injury on the economy arising from a reduction in the flow of investment. ZIAFAC Executive Director Maurice Malambo tells Money FM News that his organization also acknowledges the fact that the citizenry has the moral right and the duty to make audit of national governance, however, further advising that it is important to do so in a non-malicious manner and also provide alternatives. Mr. Malambo says it is important and progressive for Zambians to understand that in Zambia currently there is no debt crisis, neither debt distress. What is being implemented by government are measures to prevent debt crisis. Mr. Malambo has told Q News in an interview that the organization has taken note of the negative and positive positions made by different stakeholders regards of some important decisions made by the government in the management of the economy, such as the intended refinancing of the Eurobond, some austerity measures and debt levels in the country. He states that the austerity measures are a temporal undertaking, in economic language referred to as moratorium, on specific areas of expenditure on the increase in expenditure in order to generate some savings and direct the same to the areas that are in acute need or are of urgent necessity at the time.
The capacity such as the road network system, the railway infrastructure, dams that are being created across the country, that is building capacity to grow. And therefore, there's no need to politicize. As a matter of fact, we are taken aback that some of the people that sat in cabinet to approve the acquisition of debt, among them Honorable Kalaba and his lawmaker counterpart, Honorable Shimba Kambui, were part of the process of acquiring debt. So there's no need for them to turn around and make political capital regards debt, because they were part of the process. And the debt situation in the country is extremely sustainable. So there's no need for people to panic. Let us learn as a people to speak positive about ourselves, to speak positive about our economy. It is that positivity that brings about development. So there's no need for people to make political capital out of the debt situation. There is no country in the world that has no debt. The capacity such.
Ministry of Commerce, Trade and Industry Director of Cooperatives, Shadrack Mungalava, has expressed concern that despite the country having over 40,000 cooperatives, only 50% of them are active. Mr. Mungalava has told Q News in an interview that one of the problems contributing to cooperatives being inactive is lack of financial resources. But Mr. Mungalava says the government wants to see cooperative thriving. He reiterates that this is why President Lungu transferred cooperatives from the Ministry of Agriculture to Commerce, Trade and Industry. Mr. Mungalava has since reminded cooperatives groups to be business-oriented if they are to maximize their gains. He says before registering their cooperatives, there is need for people to strategize on what kind of business they intend to do or establish and how it will be run. And Mr. Mungalaba has, however, observed that many people become stuck after registering their cooperatives because of not having clear ideas of their business intentions.
I would point out the challenge of access to investable resources, which is financing for their enterprises. This is a big problem. You recall in the years past, they used to have their own cooperative financing services in form of financing services, in form of CUSA savings and credit. Most of them went under. The cooperative bank used to be there. You recall in the early 90s, it also closed its doors. So that is the biggest problem that cooperatives have faced, is financing for their projects. But I think I would want to flip the coin, and I would want to think that the biggest problem as of now is mindset. Cooperative members and us as people who are supporting them, and I should say the country at large, we are still stuck in the mindset of a cooperative must receive. You will find people, I'll give you an example. They go to my registrar's office, they register a cooperative. The next day they are coming to ask for help. Now what is government going to do on this, because now we have registered a cooperative? I think that mindset is killing the spirit of a cooperative. They must understand, firstly, before they register, they must think of what business are they going to do. If they are going into this particular business, which is going to cost 10,000 for the business to be set up sustainably, that's the amount now they will share amongst themselves and call it share capital. I would point out the
Ruling Patriotic Front PF Bonamkubwa Member of Parliament Jonas Chanda has announced that 1,200 community members are being empowered for income-generating activities, IGAAS, with the 2017 Constituency Development Fund, CDF. Dr. Chanda has revealed that 40 registered community clubs in all 7 wards of the constituency are going to benefit from about 400,000 kwacha of CDF funds set aside for IGAS, and each constituency will receive 1.4 million kwacha of CDF per year. He has told Q News that each club is receiving support with about 10,000 kwacha in procured inputs for approved projects, and that there will be strong project supervision, monitoring and evaluation. Dr. Chanda has, however, reminded community club members that the purpose of empowerment is to start up profit-making projects-oriented IGAS. He has stated that only productive income generation and wealth creation can significantly reduce high poverty levels in households and communities. And Dr. Chanda says Zambians should get away from a culture of unconditional cash handouts, which only leads to instant consumption and gratification, thus creating more dependence and worsening poverty. That item concludes our news, but before we take a run, here is a recapitulation of stories in the headlines. Minister of Health Chitaluchi has dismissed online reports suggesting that there is an outbreak of Ebola in Zambia. Zambia will this month assume the presidency of the African Union AU autonomous body, African Civil Aviation Commission. On that note, we end the news. Thank you so much. Bye-bye. God bless.